Pornography is affecting millions of men, including Christians. Have you seen the effects of porn on your church? Perhaps you feel at a loss when facing the destructive force of pornography. Covenant Eyes is here to help. We created Strive, an anonymous 21-day porn detox for men. Strive will educate and equip men with powerful weapons for this battle. Contact our team today and see how Covenant Eyes and Strive can equip the men in your church to defeat pornography for good.
Mantour Ministries presents the Mantour Guy podcast. We may talk about football. We could mention bacon. We might reference Rocky movies. We'll probably discuss the Mantour conferences, but we'll definitely talk about how to grow in our walk with God. Here's your host, the Mantour Guy, Jamie Holden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Mantour Guy podcast. Jamie Holden here, and it's so great to be back with you again after our short summer break. I hope you enjoyed our look back at the best of the 2021 podcast we ran in August. Guys, thank you so much for your patience with this. I am happy to let you know that our new book for 2022 is written and it's in the printing stage now. It was a tough project this year writing this book, while also traveling to speak on weekends and also planning the 2022 conferences. But I'm so happy with this final product in the book, and I can't wait to share it with you all very soon. Well, guys, our original plan for this first podcast back was to do our fall kickoff episode on Monday. But with all the recent news pertaining to Afghanistan, I really felt led to do a special episode today as we head into the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Man, it is so hard to believe that it's been 20 years since this horrible day in American history. It is the one day in my lifetime that I can tell you exactly where I was and what I was doing. I mean, if you asked me what I was doing on June 27, 2001 or July 18th, I would have no idea. But I vividly remember September 11th, 2021. It was a magnificent fall day in Pennsylvania where I lived. The sky was a deep, beautiful blue and had white, fluffy clouds. You couldn't ask for a more beautiful day. I woke up and I grabbed some breakfast and headed into the living room and flipped on ESPN because I wanted to see the highlights of the Monday Night Football game that happened the night before. My Broncos had beaten the New York Giants and I wanted to relive the victory once again. I was a few minutes early though for the top of the hour to see the highlights, so I flipped over to Fox and Friends on Fox News. And they were talking about a plane had apparently hit one of the trade towers in New York City. And at this early stage, they were reporting it was probably a small plane and probably was an accident. I watched it for a minute or two, but then I flipped back to ESPN and I watched the highlights. My mom and my sister, they were in the kitchen making a birthday cake for my dad. Yeah, his birthday, September 11th. And they were doing that. I was watching the highlights of the game, but then I flipped back to Fox News after they were over. And while I was away, the second plane had hit the second tower. And because news crews were covering the first crash, there was video footage of the second plane crashing, and it was clear to see that this was no little plane. It was a commercial flight. And everything changed in that moment. It became clear to everyone that this was an intentional attack. Someone was attacking the United States. And then a few minutes later, the news broadcasted a third plane had been hijacked and crashed into the Pentagon. And it was unbelievable. And even more unbelievable was what happened next. I will never forget watching the first tower fall. Seeing this massive structure crumble and the city being covered in the dust and the soot and the dirt and seeing people run for their lives. It was like a scene from a bad Hollywood movie. But it was real. It was happening. It was surreal to watch people running out of the dirt, completely covered in this white dust, bleeding and coughing. And even more amazing was watching the policemen and the firemen going the other direction, into the mayhem and towards the fallen towers. I mean, what heroes. And shortly after towers fell, the news began broadcasting that the fourth plane had crashed into Shanksville, Pennsylvania. I live in Pennsylvania. At that moment, all feeling of any security that might have remained, it left. We were left wondering how many more planes were out there and was anyone safe? They could hit anyone, anywhere. And a short time later, 1/2 hour after the first tower collapsed, the second tower fell. And again, the soot and the ash and the dust. It was unfathomable as people ran for their lives. It was truly an infamous day, one that changed America completely. And in the coming days and months, America grieved and mourned and slowly began rebuilding. And then it was time for payback. In October, Operation Enduring Freedom began, and thus the war in Afghanistan began. And as you know, this war, it came back in the news lately as President Biden began a horrible withdrawal plan that resulted in absolute chaos. 13 U.S. soldiers were killed. We ended up returning Afghanistan back into the Taliban control. And even worse, the president left weaponry and vehicles behind, basically arming the Taliban that we had fought for 20 years with our weapons. And this debacle has made what was going to be a tough 20-year anniversary of 9/11 even harder. And it is disgraceful what has happened over the past few weeks. So many people are hurting right now. Soldiers are furious over the way that the withdrawal was held. Men and women who left arms and legs in Afghanistan are watching us hand it back to the men they fought against. It has been a heartbreaking time once again in American history. Even more heartbreaking is listening to the family members of the fallen soldiers talk about the unnecessary loss of their children. They are outraged, and even more so as the president checks his watch as these fallen heroes' bodies are returned home. Our country sits in disbelief as, for the first time in history, the motto, "No one left behind," has been ignored, leaving Americans as well as Afghani interpreters who risked everything to help the USA are left behind under Taliban control. We shudder in horror as we hear the Taliban going door to door seeking out these people to kill them. We mourn the beheadings of Christians. The Taliban is stopping people and searching their phones for any Bible or Christian app, and if they find it on your phone, they kill you. We grieve for the girls and the women who are now back under Taliban control. The average age of people in Afghanistan is 25 years old, and that means most Afghanis have known no other life than the freedom they enjoyed for 20 years after the U.S. liberation. And now they're back under Taliban control. Women will no longer be allowed to work. Girls are being sold into sex slaves or are raped and killed or forced into marriages with the Taliban soldiers. It is unspeakably horrendous what our political leaders have allowed to happen. And this is why our 9/11 anniversary, which is a painful time, is even more painful this year. You see it everywhere. Soldiers and vets who are heroes, who did a good work, who have done nothing wrong, are hanging their heads, even though this debacle is in no way their fault. First responders who were labeled heroes after 9/11 now face cries for them to be defunded as the progressive left demonizes them. We as a nation claimed we would never forget what happened on 9/11, but it seems like too many have forgotten. I have a friend who is a fireman in Buffalo. As soon as 9/11 happened, he went straight to New York City to volunteer to help. He spent weeks there helping with the aftermath. He worked hard to help the people of New York. And every year since, he's always spoken in churches around 9/11 about that day and what he experienced. But this year he told me he just can't do it. He can't do another 9/11 service. And guys, I believe my friend is not alone. I believe there are so many soldiers and first responders and people who experienced the horrors of 9/11, who experienced the horrors of the war in Afghanistan. And this year is especially difficult for them. So how do we as believers, how can we help out on this 20-year anniversary? How do we help so many hurting people? How do we handle our own outrage about the events of the past few weeks? Well, I have a few things here that I wanted to share with you that can help us be the men of God to these hurting people during this difficult time. And the first thing we can do is we need to hit our knees. We must pray for our soldiers and their veterans during this difficult time. They gave it all. They gave everything they got. They sacrificed and they served. And so many lost lives, so many lost limbs. So many are still dealing with the traumatic after effects, both mentally and emotionally. And having seen what happened over the past few weeks have brought all that back to them again. We have to pray for God to give them peace and hope. So many have been triggered the past month with PTSD and memories because of what's happening, and we need to be hitting our knees in prayer, praying for these amazing veterans who have done nothing wrong, who did everything right, but are experiencing trauma and horrible memories as they remember what happened. We also need to pray for our first responders. Our police forces are so discouraged in our country. They get up every day to protect and serve, and they receive attacks in response. Retirement among policemen are up. The recruitment of new officers is down. Morale among policemen is so low. We must pray for our first responders and ask God to help them. We need to be praying for the people of Afghanistan. They need prayer. Afghani believers need us holding them up in prayer, that they will be strong and courageous, and even when facing death, they do not deny their God, that they stand strong, and that God gives them everything they need. The women and children in Afghanistan, they need our prayers. And guys, we even need to pray for the Taliban, that they have a change of heart, that they have a road to Damascus experience like Paul experienced as he terrorized the early church, where they realize that they are sinning and they turn to God. Guys, finally, and this one's tough, but we have to pray for our president. He has messed up so badly. He has handled the situation so poorly, and his response to the debacle has just been horrendous. But as much as we hate what he has done, he's still the leader. God allowed him to be the president of the United States. He is in the leadership position, and the Bible tells us to pray for our leaders. And we need to pray for our president, that God gives him wisdom and strength to get us back on track and to just handle the situation so much better than he's been handling it up to this point. The second thing that we can do, man, is we need to be checking in on our veterans and those affected by 9/11. Anniversaries like 9/11 are hard times for veterans, first responders, and the family of those who lost loved ones. If you know anyone who served in Afghanistan or who responded to 9/11, or anyone who lost someone in 9/11 or the resulting war, I encourage you this week, take time to check in on them. Let them know you care. Ask them how they are doing and listen as they respond. Be attentive, hear their heart, listen to them, be there for them, be the person that they need supporting them. Pray with them. Offer to help them. Do something nice to help them. Send them a meal. Do something, anything to let them know that you care. This is a tough weekend for so many. It's our job as a God to reach out and make sure that they are doing okay. And finally, guys, I want to encourage you to thank any veterans or first responders you see for their service. Make this a habit daily. I always try, whenever I encounter a soldier in uniform or police officer, I always strive to take a moment and just stop them and thank them for their service. So when you're in a parking lot or walking through a store, or you're walking down the street and you pass a soldier in uniform or a policeman, let them know that you appreciate the service and the sacrifices they make. It is such a little thing to just stop and say thank you. But it makes such a huge difference to people who are constantly facing attacks and criticism. They need to hear that they are appreciated, guys. It's such a little thing, but it's something that we can do.
The Mantour Guy's final thought.
Guys, I hope you take this podcast to heart and you put it into action. We all probably know someone who has been affected by 9/11. Whether it be someone who lost somebody that day, whether it be a first responder or a policeman who responded to the call, whether it's a soldier who went to war afterwards, or a family member who lost a soldier in the war, or a family member who lost somebody on 9/11. Let's be strong brothers to them and reach out to them this week. Let's hit our knees and pray for our vets as they deal with so many memories because of this inept withdrawal we have all seen happen. Let's do everything we can do to help those around us face this 20th anniversary of 9/11. It's what a man of God should be doing during this difficult time, being supportive to those who need. Let's be that man. Let's be that support, that encourager, that friend to hurting people as we look back at this 20-year anniversary of one of the most difficult days we faced as a nation. Well, guys, we've reached the end of our time together this week. just some real quick business. We're not going to have another episode on Monday, but we'll be back to our normal schedule again starting on Monday, September 20th as we head into fall. Stay tuned. We have a lot of great episodes planned. You're not going to want to miss any. And to make sure you don't miss any episodes, why don't you take a minute and subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. This helps us reach even more men so they can grow in their walk with God. And also, make sure to visit MantourMinistries.com. You can learn more about our conferences as well as our resources. You can read the first chapter of most of our books for free, and you can also sign up for our year-long Bible plan and so much more. So make sure to head to MantourMinistries.com today. And once again, guys, thanks for joining us. Make sure you're there for someone in need this weekend, and we'll see you next time on the Mantour Guy Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Mantour Guy Podcast. Be sure to visit MantourMinistries.com to learn more about our books, men's ministry resources, and our Mantour conferences.
Have you been looking for a Bible study that you can work through with your wife? Maybe you want to do devotional time with your daughter. Guys, we have the answer for you. You can buy both the men's and women's edition of Whatever It Takes for $15. This amazing deal is only available at our Mantour Ministries online store. If you go to Amazon, it is $14.99 for just the men's version. So many men are buying both versions and going through them with their wives and daughters. Do not miss this opportunity. Take advantage of this amazing deal today at MantourMinistries.com and click on the online store button.
Order your copy today at MantourMinistries.com.
Hey guys, Mantour Guy Jamie Holden here. Are you looking for a speaker at your church or for your men's breakfast, or your next men's event, men's retreat, or men's conference? Well, why not bring me in to speak? God has been moving among men as I've been sharing an encouraging word of freedom and victory. We're seeing lives change, men being saved, people being set free, and guys, chains are being broken. So if your church has hurting men and women, contact me to come share this encouraging word of hope and victory to help you grow in your walk with God.
The Mantour Guy Podcast, helping men grow in their walk with God.